life to keeping Winship daughter's gin solvent enough to repay the high cost of insurance and her own significant debts. The distillery was the legacy her father had bequeathed her, and she had slaved to make it profitable enough to pass on to her own son and daughter. The children themselves had been, she admitted now, of secondary importance. And after placid recompense had declined a third time to be trained in the family business, Prue had felt herself powerfully betrayed, and had wondered, with a flash of a cold-heartedness she had not experienced in some time, if she would ever again have use for such a daughter. Jonas Sutler, the son of a man in the whaling trade at Hudson, had come soon after to ask for Recompense's hand. And as her husband had given his warm consent, Prue had sat wondering why anyone would want such an unadventurous creature, and why she herself was too hard-hearted to feel any of the emotions appropriate to the occasion. Yet when the August wedding day had arrived, Prue had felt a terrible wrenching ache at the thought of her daughter leaving. She'd wished she could say she had never known such an ache before, but its pain had been so poignant because of its familiarity. It had reminded her in an instant of every loss she had ever suffered. And as Mr. and Mrs. Jonas Sutler had departed for their wedding tour of the upper Hudson, Prue had stood on the landing of the new ferry and wept into her husband's coat. Prue had struck up the correspondence to ease the intolerable pain of having a little valued daughter vanish from sight. She herself had once passed the town of Hudson by boat, but not knowing she would ever wish to envision the particulars of its streets, she had committed nothing but its vaguest outline to memory. Now she peppered her daughter with questions, and learned the Sutlers had a tall house bounded by a fence, with a garden that continued to produce cabbage and chrysanthemums well into October. The household employed 3 Irish servants. Jonas had grown up in educated society, and the wives and sisters of his cousins and childhood friends were lively conversationalists, zealots for good books, the manumission of the few remaining local slaves, and politics. Yet for all of this, Recompense confessed to missing Brookland, with its old Dutch houses scattered across the landscape despite a newly laid grid of regular streets. She was homesick, in addition to which she was spending the longest evenings of the year propped up on a sofa and trying to keep down salt biscuits and tea. Prue realized it was only natural her daughter should seek out the missing pieces of her family history. And though she herself had taken pains to conceal the story of the bridge works all this time, one evasion leading to the next until at last she had lost sight of the original reason for her reticence, her love for her far-off daughter, and her compunction at having ignored her before she'd moved away, made Prue believe she could change her course. It was thus that on the first full day of the 6th decade of her life, Prue Winship thanked her daughter for the beautiful shawl, expressed her delight at the prospect of a grandchild, and commenced in a roundabout way telling the story Recompense wished to hear. The correspondence would hold them both in its thrall the remainder of that winter and spring. "There is much to tell you," she wrote. "Though, of course, if you were here, I would brush off your questions and return to my gin as ever I have done. But distance changes much. I have missed you with a pain very like that of yearning for the dead since you have been gone. And you were, a decade since, old enough to hear the whole of it. I would like to think only my busyness in the distillery has kept me from relating it, but this isn't so. My silence on this matter has been partly due to bad character, which I hope at this late date I can amend."